Welcome back to Next Scene's Big Adventure, the podcast where we take on Pee-wee's Big Adventure about 10 minutes at a time. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us for part 4. We're running from about minute 30 to minute 40 in the film. We're going to cover Pee-wee's encounter with Madame Ruby. We get a little bit of hitchhiking and then picked up by Mickey, and then Pee-wee behind the wheel. A little bit of the P-dubs doing a bit of driving, and that wraps up this section. And joining me today for part 4 is a very special guest, all the way from the Apocalypse Now minutes and others. It's Chris Frayne. Chris, thank you. Welcome for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Sean. Thanks for having me on. This is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I love talking about it. And it is definitely my favorite non-heavy movie, not serious or whatever. So yeah, I can't wait to talk about this.
Yeah, I mean, you've covered, talk about heavy movies. Apocalypse Now, that's a heavy one.
Yeah, and we also made the decision to not stick to the strict movie by minute format on that one.
Mm-hmm.
We did not. Yeah. We'd still be taping episodes now if we did.
You'd still be talking about it. Yeah. So I'm used to that. Yeah, definitely a much different flavor when you're talking about the behind the scenes stuff and kind of commentary from. I don't know if you had a lot of there's some commentary from the director, but a lot of commentary from his wife and other people that were on the set during the filming of Apocalypse Now, and it's a very great contrast to Paul Rubens and Tim Burton and Danny Elfman talking about their experience making this film.
Yeah, as far as I know, production wasn't delayed by a typhoon or Marlon Brando showing up overweight or something. Yeah, I know. Yeah. For Pee-wee. Yeah.
But so glad to hear that this is a movie you enjoy talking about, because you've definitely come to the right place for that. And so I'm gonna get you talking right from the get-go. I hope you're warmed up, and I'll start with the question I'm asking all my guests. What is your experience with Pee-wee's Big Adventure and Pee-wee Herman as a character? Did you see this in the theater? Did you know about Pee-wee before you saw it? What's your Pee-wee history?
Sure. So I'm probably going to be the oldest guest that you will have on this show. And
it's not a contest.
It's not a contest, but I'm winning.
You're winning.
And I actually remember the Pee-wee Herman HBO special.
Yeah, the Pee-wee Herman show.
From 1981, I want to say.
I think. Yeah.
81. For some reason, my family had HBO for like a year. Back then, I guess I was 9. But I have older siblings. And I heard them talking about it. And I'm like, oh, I got to check this out. And I was a weird kid. I would stay up late to watch SNL starting when I was like 7. Mm-hmm. I would stay up late to watch SCTV and things like that. And my parents were nice enough to indulge me on that. So I already had like a weird alt comedy bug a little bit, especially, the weirder it was and the more I didn't understand it, it appealed to me. And so I remember watching the HBO special, and I want to say either my mom or one of my sisters was in the room, and they were kind of like, there were at times where I could tell I wasn't supposed to hear or understand. I wasn't supposed to. Things I shouldn't understand were happening in the special, things that were a little edgy or, double entendre type stuff. And so I remember that and kind of filed that away of like, oh, that was kind of funny, but I had no idea what it was. And then fast forward to 1985. By the way, what month did this come out in?
This came out in August.
August. Okay. So that explains it. Because I've always wondered, why didn't I see this in the theater when it came out? I guarantee you in August of 1985, I was doing 2-a-day football practices.
Oh, okay.
For my high school JV football team. Those are exhausting. And, you're out in 95-degree heat for basically 6 hours a day, exerting yourself And this would have been the first time, this would have been my freshman year. So like I really was not used to that level of activity. And so yeah, I remember just coming home and going to sleep for 10 hours, getting up and doing it again. So if this had a 2 or 3 week run in the theater, I didn't see it. I may have known about it, but I've always wondered, why didn't I see that in the theater? But I did see it on cable, gosh, probably 2 or 3 years afterwards. And I remember the moment that hooked me. And that is when later on, we'll get to this in a few months, I guess, on your show. When Twisted Sister are going down the street and they're singing the song and the lyrics are "You're gonna burn in hell," and then it's juxtaposing that to Pee Wee Herman riding his bike, and with that goofy grin on his face. I was like, I just knew that's my sensibility. Those like goofy juxtapositions, And so I became a big fan of it after that. I'm pretty sure I had it on VHS, probably taped off of TV and then on DVD. I think I've owned this in 3 different formats now. Yeah. And here's the weird thing though, because of my age, I did not get into Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Right. Okay.
Because it's a different, not only is it aimed at younger viewers, but it's a different version of Pee-wee. And it doesn't have Pee-wee's Playhouse. I mean, I did watch a few episodes when it was on. And I remember, I didn't think in these terms, but I'm thinking about it now. There's an entire curated reality to Pee-wee's Playhouse, right? And actually the first 2 parts of the movie that you covered are basically that perfect world of Pee-wee that he lives in. And then the adventure is he has to go out into the rest of the normal world.
Right. He comes into our real world.
He comes into our real world. Now, granted, it's still, oddly enough, still stuck in the early 60s. And he has an incredible batting average for winning over people in the real world that you wouldn't have. That I don't experience. But where was I going with that? Oh yeah, so it's a different version of Pee-wee and the universe that he inhabits in Pee-wee's Playhouse than this movie. And so because I was such a fan of the movie, I'm like, I feel like I'm getting a watered down version or a softer edge version. Now, I have come to appreciate Pee-wee's Playhouse on its own because I'm not actively comparing it. So But this is my favorite iteration. And I think it's interesting that the character really does change from project to project. Going back to that HBO special, the voice is different. It's a much higher pitched voice. He's really trying to sell this as being like, I'm not just a possible man child. I really am like a 7-year-old boy, Make no mistake, even though you see someone who's 5 feet 8 inches tall, I am a 7-year-old boy. Whereas I think part of the joke in Pee-wee's Big Adventure, it's like, who is he really? Is he a man pretending to be a boy? Is he like, what's going on?
Is he a boyish man? Is he a mannish boy?
Right.
Yeah. So I'm of a similar age and similar experience in terms of my exposure to Pee-wee. And so I didn't watch Playhouse when it was on. I've since, I've been watching it recently. Only recently did I start watching it, and I can kind of appreciate it and enjoy it. But whereas like that original HBO special and the original Pee-wee Herman show was sort of a parody of children's shows. And I think, in that it seems like the character is actually a boy. It's just, we're going to have an adult actor play it, but like the characters in that, Pee-wee, Hammy, and some of the others, like they're actual children, just played by adults. But whereas, when we get to Pee-wee's Big Adventure, I think he is, he is an adult. He's just a boyish, a boyish man.
He lives in his own house.
Yeah.
We don't know what he does for a living, but he has his house.
Somehow,
he has his own stuff.
And then whereas like that that, whereas the Pee Wee Herman show was sort of a parody of children's shows, then he goes ahead and makes Playhouse, which is a sincere,
A
is
sincere
a children's
show.
show,
Yeah.
an
An
actual
excellent
children's
one at
show.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then in the other movie, and then I think that kind of carries forward with the other films, the Big Top and Pee Wee's Big Holiday, in terms of the evolution of the character. Is always, Pee Wee grows and changes, and he's a little bit different each time. And
although
maybe
I think that the holiday movie, what's it called again? Is it Pee Wee's Big Holiday?
Yeah,
right?
Pee Wee's Big Holiday.
I think that's probably the closest we get to a return to the Big Adventure iteration of the character in tone. But I don't know. I remember really liking that one, and I think I attempted to watch Big Top Pee Wee twice. Got through it once, and I think the very first time I tried, I couldn't even get through it. So
yeah, I think once and even none is probably okay. I kind of feel the same way about Big Top. Not probably my least favorite iteration of the Pee Wee Herman character. Now, are you a fan of Paul Reubens? Do you have like a favorite kind of non-Pee Wee performance, or anything you'd want to call out that you particularly enjoy?
Yeah, the only thing I can think of, and it's such a brief cameo. I mean, they really don't give him room to do anything, but it's one of those jump up and go, "Oh my God, it's Pee Wee!" Yeah. It's when he's a waiter in the Blues Brothers.
Oh yeah,
famously in that scene where they go in, they're trying to get, I forget it, Murph, or no, it was Blue Lou. They're trying to get one of the band members.
Oh no,
to come back.
Mr. Fabulous was
Mr. Fabulous. That's
Mr. Fabulous was a maitre d' at some fancy restaurant.
Right.
They're trying to get him for the band.
They're trying to get him back, and so they're just like, "We're going to cause a scene here in the restaurant until you agree to get back in the band." And of course, Paul Reubens is uptight waiter having to deal with them making a scene. It's great. But yeah, I hate to say it, I'm not really that familiar with some of his other work. And it's funny because, well, not funny, actually the exact opposite. When he passed away in August, was that in August?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was over the
I'm
summer.
someone who I don't really react to celebrity deaths, and I really felt that one. I moped around all day that day. My wife could tell. She's like, "Wow, this really upset you." And I'm like, I don't even know any of the other movies he was in, but for some reason, it's just the idea that there will never be, like, this is the end of there ever even where there could be another, Pee Wee movie or project or anything. This is it. And yeah, it really, really made me sad. But yeah, I know he's in some like Cheech and Chong movie.
Yeah.
I think he's in the Buffy movie from the early 90s. Oh, I think he's yeah.
Yeah. Well, he did so just speaking of like the Cheech and Chong stuff. So yeah, early on he's got like a bunch of little things like the waiter in Blues Brothers, like just small parts, blink if you miss it, but like he brings it for what little screen time he gets. He's got like a handful of those early on before he kind of broke out to Paul Reubens has before he kind of broke out with the Pee Wee character. And then the Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where he steals the movie. After he passed, I probably had seen that film in 20 or 30 years, and then I went back and watched it and kind of forgot. Like I thought he had a bigger part just because it's so memorable, and then I watch it, I'm like, no, this is like a little bit part, but he makes the most of it. And then we've talked about Buffy before on the show, but I don't know if we mentioned What We Do in the Shadows. When he comes back, they had an episode, I forget if it was which season it was, but they have an episode where there's like a meeting of the Vampire Council, and it's all these movie vampires. It's like like the original, the vampires from the What We Do in the Shadows film that they have in the TV show. But then Paul's there kind of playing his Buffy the Vampire Slayer character, or it's kind of, well, no, actually he's playing himself. It's kind of like the setup is all the actors who play vampires are all really vampires, so they're there as themselves. They're not playing their vampire characters. Right. But yeah, so he really. So that's great. So that's, you have a good background in Paul Rubin and Pee Wee, so we can talk about this film. And so let's actually talk a little bit about the movie. So we start off with so Pee Wee. He has just left his basement where he's been trying to go over all the evidence with Dottie and all his friends, and they've kind of got tired and they don't see where it's going. So now he is wandering the streets. He's kind of wandered over to the bad part of town. It's raining. He's accosted by a group of thugs. And I want to mention that because we get a little director cameo.
Speaking of cameos, yeah.
Speaking of cameos, so this is director Tim Burton. Who's got the line like, we don't take kindly to strangers coming around here.
In the screenplay, which I looked up, it refers to them as like a street gang, and I'm like, that's the least threatening street gang I've ever seen. I think it's interesting that this is really the moment where he leaves the bubble, and the bubble being, I just call it Pasadena because I know that's where the Pee Wee house is, right? Mm-hmm. But he leaves the Southern California, the Pasadena, the Santa Monica, whatever it is. And the second he leaves, because he's determined no one's going to help me, no one in my bubble is going to help me with this. I'm going to have to do this on my own. The second he leaves that bubble, he is now in what is coded as being like either New York or Chicago. Like, it's not even LA. Like he's like the idea of like the archetype of city is this, which, oddly enough is sort of like, I guarantee, or I shouldn't guarantee, I bet that this is the same lot that Blade Runner was filmed at, which is supposed to be Los Angeles in the far future of 2019. But yeah, I just love that his first step outside the bubble, it is raining cats and dogs, and he's in the Bronx or something.
Yeah, because they make no effort to hide, whether it's Pasadena or Santa Monica or the other, Burbank with this movie studio and the other locations around Southern California, around the kind of the greater LA area where this is filmed. Like, again, there's no attempt to hide where they're filming until this scene, and suddenly it's like Skid Row. This is like This is like from the beginning of Little Shop of Horrors here,
which actually is in LA. So maybe that works.
Except for the rain. I guess it does rain. Like, rain does happen in LA.
And I bet this is just the effects rain where they have the pipes above the street. Mm-hmm. I want to say, based on my experience in Southern California, this whole movie looks like it was filmed in February because of how green. If you look at any scene where there are hills in the background, it's actually quite green for Southern California. And just like there's some scenes where you can see a little bit of, you can see their breath a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I know that the screenplay was dated January of 85. So I'm thinking, unless you know otherwise, do you know when a majority of the principal photography happened?
I don't know. I haven't been able to find dates for the shooting schedule. But the last version, the latest revision of the script I could find, which is pretty close to what we see on screen, is from March. Like we said earlier, it comes out in August. So So sometime in that time frame. So sometime around. I'm guessing, and I don't know. Sometimes revisions continue to happen as shooting happens. So so some of these scenes may have been shot before the script was finished.
But anyways,
but somewhere February, March, April, probably the spring of 85 would be when it was filmed.
And that's when LA gets rained on, for a couple of weeks, and then that's it.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, so this gang is not as threatening as Pee-wee is. So in his mood, he hisses and they scatter like rats.
Oh, and I love the brilliant thing they do with his shadow,
Oh
right
yeah, yeah,
before
yeah.
it. And it's sort of a callback to sort of German expressionist filmmaking, like Murnau or Fritz Lang or somebody like the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari,
Yeah.
where you just see the like big looming shadows, and then it's actually just a small person, casting
Yeah.
these huge shadows.
Yeah, to great effect. Yeah, this giant monster of a shadow, and then we see, oh, it's just our little old Pee-wee. So yeah, so the gang scatters, and then he sees a sign in the night, a neon sign saying Madame Ruby's tarot cards, palms red, income tax. So you got to, this is a full service establishment
Yeah,
here.
this is the last stop for desperate people who are going to get ripped off.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Quick little difference. I mentioned the script. So difference between the version of the script I have from March and the script says he rings the bell, but in the film he knocks on the door. So minor difference there, but otherwise it's kind of everything comes up as written. Yeah, and so Pee-wee knocks. She opens up, cash only, no cards, no checks. So Pee-wee has cash.
Always a
He
good
comes
sign.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Always
want to
sign
do business
of a
with someone
crook.
who doesn't want to leave a paper trail. That's always good. Yeah.
Always good. Always good. Do you have you ever been to a psychic? Have you ever done a
Oh my
reading?
gosh.
That
No.
sort?
No. And in fact, when I saw this, when I was rewatching this, it made me think of there was a psychic in Albuquerque where I lived for a long time named Psychic Anna, which I don't know why I thought that was funny. Like just to have this very like pedestrian name and then psychic in front, like
Yeah.
Psychic Greg, you know. Um,
Yeah.
but Psychic Anna, and you could see it from like the interstate when you drove through Albuquerque, and I'm like, okay, what's it going to take for me to go in there? What's going to have to happen where I'm at the point where I'm going to go see Psychic Anna? And then, yeah, but I've never done this.
Yeah.
It'd be
I've
fun. It'd be fun if like you were on like I don't know, if you went to a carnival or something and somebody else paid for it.
that's the key. If somebody else paid
Yeah,
for it.
I'm not going to pay for this, but it'd be fun to do.
Yeah. I've done it twice. Well, I've done it once in person. I went to an actual kind of reader like this, and then one time I called one of those 900 numbers.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
and both were with a girlfriend, but different girlfriends. So I think the first time we were like waiting, and it was like the least like spiritual, spooky, or enlightened setting, and to figure if you're
It was
gonna
an office
really.
park, and yeah,
Yeah, it was in like a suburban strip mall. I think we were waiting for a table at like an Outback or something, and
right.
it was a long wait for dinner. And we're like, "What are we gonna do?" Oh, next door to the restaurant is is a psychic, as if you're really gonna commune with the great beyond in a suburban strip mall. But yeah, so I did, and that was like early 20s with a girlfriend, and then in like the 90s with a different girlfriend who's now my wife. We were like, again, just as a lark, not thinking it serious. We called up a 900 psychic number, but they like both readings, and I don't know if this means anything. Maybe it's like maybe there's a commonality there that means something. But both times the woman I was with, the girlfriend, got like I'll say quote unquote specific reading. And obviously they all speak in generalities. They don't get specific because they kind of like give you just enough that you can kind of fill in the blanks yourself and make it feel like it's specific. But they said things like you know you're good, keep working, you're gonna, work is going well, you're gonna get a promotion, good things are going to happen. You're going to have good luck, and kind of like semi-specific, as specific as they can get without
Right.
digging too much. Because this, we never went back. This was a single reading, so it wasn't like the psychic had a chance to like kind of build up a book on us. But so like both my girlfriends, both instances got something that was kind of quote unquote specific, and then my readings were like garbage. I got nothing, and I don't remember too much about the one in person because that was many, many years ago. But I remember the one with my now wife. And the psychic was like, yeah, sometimes, some good things are going to happen and some bad things. And sometimes work is good and sometimes work is bad. I'm like, what? I'm paying like $4 a minute for that.
Right. This
Like
is on the phone. Yeah.
Yeah. For, even for entertainment purposes,
Right.
I was not entertained. I got very disappointing readings, but, but these are like, in person versus the phone and separated by decades. The only commonality between the two things was me. So I don't know, maybe I'm just not a good subject for that kind of.
What was it? Miss Cleo? I suddenly remembered
Yeah.
that there was a Miss Cleo who was
That rings.
one of
I don't
those
know if I don't think it
telephone
was Miss
psychics.
Cleo that we called, but that rings a bell.
Yeah.
That was one of the services. Yeah, Miss Cleo. But yeah. So anyway, so Pee-wee pops in. He's got some cash, which so Madame Ruby says for $20 I can tell you a lot of things. For $30 I can tell you more. For $50 I tell you everything. And Pee-wee, well, first we see Pee-wee is someone who keeps all his money in his wallet, bills and change.
And change. Weird.
And change.
Yeah.
And he dumps it all out. He wants to know what she's got to hear.
And it looks like he has like $375. Like
yeah. I got at most $578. So I think there are 5 distinct bills. I'm assuming they're all ones.
Right.
And it looks like there's 3. I could see 3 quarters and 3 pennies, and then maybe a couple coins that kind of roll out of view that I couldn't see on the table. But it's not $50 unless some of those bills are big ones. It's not a lot of money, but it's enough because he gets his reading. And so Madame Ruby grabs his wallet. So she's doing a cold reading. She starts off with, you're here because you want something, which is, everybody wants something.
Right.
No, I'm here because I want nothing. Like that, that's kind of part of the gig.
You're here because there's a long wait for a table at the Cheesecake Factory. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. But, they keep it general, but she managed to snag his wallet out of his hand. And so, of course, he's got lots of pictures of himself in the X1. So she knows, it's, you hear about a bicycle and then he asks, where is it? So now she knows, he's looking for the bicycle. And she, she Kaiser Soze's him.
Exactly. That's exactly what I wrote. That's exactly in my notes. Yeah.
Yeah. Years before we knew Kaiser Soze was a thing, but so she looks around and she kind of picks up. She sees Al and Moe's discount warehouse that she turns into the Alamo,
right?
And then she sees bargain basement prices, and so she'll say it's in the basement.
Now that wall has always been there in front of her. Yes. And I'm going to assume she's been doing this in that location for at least, let's call it 3 years.
Mm-hmm. She's invested in neon.
There you go. Yeah, that's an indicator. So every day she's trying to work in the idea of Alamo and basement into every psychic reading she's doing. Like if that's the only thing that she has pretty much in eye shot of, I just picture somebody else coming in and she's like, it'd be funny if Pee-wee ran into like 10 other people at the Alamo who were all there because
of Madame Ruby.
Because of Madame Ruby, yeah.
That's funny because I didn't get so far as to assume that he would run into a lot of other people, but I made the same note that she must give a lot of similar readings. Just having the same, the same building across the street from her, the same view outside her window. Maybe the next person that comes in is, you're seeking Pi Alamode.
Oh, there you go.
She just kind of, She can't. I'm hoping she doesn't send everyone to the Alamo, but maybe. But anytime you're looking for something, Madame Ruby, it's always in the basement. Maybe that's her thing. So she's going to point Pee-wee towards the basement of the Alamo. And so, anything else on Madame Ruby before we get out on the open road?
If you Google Madame Ruby, the first hit that you get, and it's interesting. Apparently this location was copied and used. I know nothing about World of Warcraft, but apparently it is a location in World of Warcraft. Like
Oh.
the Madame Ruby, because when I Googled this, I was like, what is this? And they actually have like a character named Madame Ruby, because when I went to try to find who is this actress that we're
Mhm.
seeing, I ended up with a voice actress from the video game, and I'm like, no, I don't think so.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a location in World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
very strange.
Oh.
Erica Yan is
Yeah,
the
yeah. Like
actress
I
that
should,
we
yeah,
have.
sorry. We should say something about the actress. Yeah, about Erica.
And
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I thought it was funny that she, in the same year as this movie, portrayed someone named Madame Loretta on an episode
Right.
of Night Court.
Yeah, a night court.
She
Um, did not seem
typecast.
to get typecast. So not like I know we've talked about like some of the bikers, when we get to the Satan helpers, like some of those guys have got, you look in their IMDb and there's 20 different times they've played like a biker or gangster or something like that. And then I see like a lot of cops, see people got to get typecast. You look at their IMDb and they're like cop, police, sergeant,
Right.
a bunch of those roles. But yeah, it seemed like Night Court in this, I think her only kind of psychic
Right.
mystic roles. Yeah, so Erica Yan got her start on Broadway, and a few things. In Lenny was the show, the kind of the bio. I don't know if there's like a like not a biopic because it was a play. I don't think she wasn't in the film Lenny, but on the stage play biography of Lenny Bruce, played Lenny's mother. Also did Cabaret, a couple other shows. Early film role, she was a governess in Godfather 2. And then
Oh, okay.
a couple other things that kind of jumped out at me is in American Tail from 1986, and then the sequels, 50 Goes West in 91, and Treasure of Manhattan Island in 98. She's the voice of Mama Mousekewitz.
There you go.
So yeah, I'm not really familiar with those films, so it didn't.
Exactly.
I don't recognize the voice, but I thought, okay, so she's Mama Mousekewitz. That's nice. Another thing that was one of those things where like I didn't make the connection, but as soon as I read it, I could picture it in my head, and I'm like, oh, of course. From Amazon Women on the Moon in
Oh, yeah,
1987, she's Selma. She's Murray's wife. Murray's the guy with the magical remote control that ends up, he gets kind of caught in the TV, and he starts showing up inside the shows, and he's calling out to Selma, and that's so yeah, she is Selma from American Women on the Moon. Thought that was interesting. So yeah, that's Erica Yan. Actually, quite a bit of a career. Did a bunch of different stuff, both before and after the Pee Wee thing. And I think she's good in here. She's nice and spooky and spiritual, and gives us a nice touch.
And yet, obviously, also the joke being that she gives off that vibe, but she's actually quite incompetent. And again, it's that juxtaposition.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, she's a complete
people
hack
performing
and a fraud,
one vibe, and
she's she's a rip-off artist. She's scamming poor Pee Wee here. She holds on. She allows him to run off without his wallet, which will become significant later.
Yep.
So yeah. So, but she's gonna send P Dubs off on the way to the Alamo, and so we cut to in true Pee Wee style. He's got the hobo bindle. He's got his worldly possessions tied up in a kerchief, tied on the end of a stick.
Isn't it polka dots too? Like it's a polka dot pattern?
Kind of white with red polka dots.
Yeah.
As he's hitchhiking to Texas or bust. Yeah, and it was interesting. So something I picked out, you mentioned earlier, kind of the time frame, like the movie feels like. I think you said you kind of feels like the 60s.
This whole universe, other than like the BMX bikers and a few other folks that we run into, I would lump the biker gang into this as well. But most of Pee Wee's world seems to happen, if I had to put a demarcation point on it, pre-Kennedy assassination, like pre-1963. And just I don't know if this was something that he and Tim Burton talked about, or if it was a if it was a conscious decision or just something out of their subconscious,
Hmm.
that like the art direction, that the choice of, in this case, in this scene, the cars that go by. I think you see one, you have to look really hard, but there's like one relatively modern, like 80s, like K car kind of thing going down. But most of the cars are either from the 40s or 50s or 60s, maybe early 70s.
Yeah, there are some 70s. There's a lot of
Yeah. Like
old
muscle
cars,
car.
but
Yeah.
that's interesting. I never thought about it like that. This is kind of the innocence of Pee Wee,
Yeah.
a callback to sort of that innocence in America
Yes. Yeah.
before the
Yeah.
Kennedy assassination. Back to like the 50s, that simpler time.
And I think like going back to that HBO special, that was that in the early 80s, there was definitely a visual motif of trying to invoke a late 50s, early
Mm-hmm.
60s look to
Yeah,
things.
well, and definitely with things like, yeah, like the late 70s, with things like Happy Days and Grease, there was
Right.
definitely a callback to, like the 50s were big in the 70s.
Right. But
Um,
also, like, if you think of it towards the end of the 70s and into the 80s, you also have like, think about like what Elvis Costello looked like then.
yeah,
Like he literally made himself look like Buddy Holly,
right,
and that was
right,
like that sort of like skinny tie, like real not tight, but like close cut like
yeah,
outfits
close
and stuff.
cut, narrow lapel, narrow
Right, short
ties.
hair, and it was, but it had like an edginess to it. It was like, yeah,
Yeah.
we're invoking the late 50s, early 60s, but we have like a kind of sneering sense of irony about it.
Hmm.
Whereas like Happy Days and Sha Na Na back in the 70s was more like a just an unbridled, sincere joy about it. This was more of like a little bit of like, yeah, we thought that was a good time, but we were also there was also a lot of interest in basically how the arms race was developing
Hmm.
in the late 70s, and it's sort of recalling when there was an arms race in the late 50s, early 60s with the Soviet Union. It seemed like a replay, of that. And I think that original Pee-wee special really brought that out. Like it was boomers looking back on their childhood
Yeah, yeah,
and going, wow, we've been through a lot already, and we're only in our like early 30s, and yet the world that we grew up in the 50s and early 60s is like, it's
it's
funny
gone.
because it's so
It's
different.
Yeah, yeah,
And I'm just trying to imagine, like, that was for them, that was only 20 years removed.
right, right.
It'd be like, imagine creating a character, and it's a retro character to your childhood, and it's from the year 2002 or something. And like, would it be that different or weird? Like, I don't. But then again, I'm the wrong person to ask because I feel like everything stopped. The only thing that really has become different in 20 years is that our TVs became flat.
That I think that's a much bigger subject. That's kind of for a separate
Yeah, for sure.
podcast. Because I've been wondering like that because I think because like in my mind I can picture like if you gave me a decade, I could give you an outfit that I think is stereotypical. Or if you
Right,
showed me an outfit, I could pick the decade from 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, maybe even 90s. But then I'm like,
right,
after that, what's the difference if you just show me like a man and a woman typical outfit? Could I pick out 2000s versus the 2010s versus the 2020s?
right.
And then I'm like, okay, is that real? Is that something that's happened? Just fashion isn't changing, or is it just I got old and I'm
Right.
not seeing the changes? Whereas like someone who's 30 now, someone who grew up over the past 20 years would be able to look at someone and instantly say, oh no, this is that's a 2003 outfit, that's 2013, this is 2023, they're all completely different.
Right.
Is that is the way, and certainly things are changing, but it's kind of like, what social media are you is it TikTok? Is it Facebook? Is it my friends? Like, that's the way I would tell kind of the
Right.
different decades now versus, where the cuffs on your pants, are they pleated or not, or and so forth, or how wide are your lapels? I don't know if, how much has that changed in the last 20 years?
Right.
Maybe it has, and I just haven't been paying attention anymore.
Yeah, I swear I could tell if you showed me a picture of a random picture of anyone in like music or film or whatever from the 80s, I could tell you the exact year
Yeah, yeah,
just from the clothes and hair.
right.
But beyond
Uh,
that, like I have no
yeah.
idea.
But so anyway, so getting back to the film,
Yeah,
I
sorry.
mentioned that at this particular point because, again, in terms of the scenery, there's no effort made to hide it. So this was actually filmed around Cal Arts, in that
Oh,
area of
okay.
Southern
Yeah.
California, where both, or actually all of them, where Paul and Tim and Danny all attended school at various times. So it's
Mhm.
kind of that area. But the vehicles we see roll by, there's a 65 Volvo, there's a 65 Ford Econoline van, a 1950 Plymouth. There's some of the newer ones, kind of quote unquote newer, are a 74 VW Bug and a
Right.
72 Mercury Montenegro or
Sure.
Montego. So I mean, even like the kind of more recent vehicles that we see are over 10 years old
Right.
at this point. And then the car that Pee-wee actually gets in, the guy that the car that actually stops to pick him up is a 1959 Edsel Corsair convertible coupe. So yeah, so kind of giving that feeling of, yeah, what year is this? What time is it? Because like you said, yeah, and I I was wondering if you're looking over my shoulder, because I have a lot of the same notes in terms of like, yeah, like the BMX, that's very contemporary. That's 1985 with the bikes that they're riding and kind of
Right.
their
The little body armor that they have on and
yeah,
everything.
the
Yeah.
way they're
Yeah.
dressed, like everything
Yeah.
in Chuck's Bike-O-Rama is solidly that's 1985.
Oh, yeah.
That's definitely true to the period. And suddenly Pee-wee steps out and he's um he's a decade at least back in time with all the old cars that we see driving by.
Yeah, this movie, every scene is sort of shaking you, sort of spinning you around and going, guess where you are, when you are, and you really don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it's a little bit out of time. Like, so
yeah,
there are certain moments where you're like, okay, this feels of a particular place and time, but don't
mhm,
get used to it, because the next scene is going to be a different world, a different place, and
right.
a different decade. We're going to keep jumping around.
Well, just the fact that he's hitchhiking. I think
Well,
the last hitchhiker I'm aware of ever seeing was in 1978. You know what I mean? Like it was something that just wasn't done
yeah,
after the 70s. So even just what he's doing is an anachronism, you know. It's sort of a fantasy.
yeah. I also want to talk about the music in this part. So that, yeah, this section of the film, the Danny Elfman's commentary track is very sparse, which is nice to kind of just watch the film with just the score going on in the background. Although for much of the car ride, there isn't any music in the
No,
background,
we
so
don't get any
it's
good
kind of
music,
quiet.
really.
But yeah, for this particular section, so Danny talks about this kind of hitchhiking theme is one of his favorites. It's up there with the breakfast machine theme in that opening sequence. But he really liked this, and he mentioned the harmonica. The harmonica part he had just written, like not playing the harmonica, just writing it out, and he thought it was very difficult, and he thought he expected there's going to be multiple takes. He even mentioned he thought they might need multiple players to kind of multiple people playing harmonica in tandem to get this part going. And they bring in this guy Tommy Morgan, who's just like, I guess if you needed harmonica playing, he was the guy. They bring him in, they roll tape, one take, he just like hits it right off the bat. And I couldn't hear it. I don't really have an ear for harmonica, but Danny's saying he's got like multiple harmonicas. He's switching on the fly
Oh, wow.
between
Okay.
different instruments, and he just
Yeah.
like these session musicians are
Yeah.
they're so much better, for the most part they're better than the people that you hear of, because they just they have to walk in, they're given Sometimes they're given sheet music. Some professional musicians don't.
Or a vague idea.
We'll just have a vague idea like, hey, can you give me something like this? But he just rolled in and did it. And I looked up, the name is Tommy Morgan, and the guy has got like hundreds of credits, like in terms like over 100 credits for harmonica, going back to things like Cool Hand Luke and the Cincinnati Kid, okay. Playing harmonica, for those things. And a lot of these are uncredited, and he's actually uncredited. Not only is he uncredited, he's not in the credits for this film. He's not listed on IMDb. He's not even in there as uncredited. But Danny Elfman specifically names him on, in his commentary track. But yeah, I mean, he's, if you heard harmonica in like the past 50 years in a film, I mean, he was in, Blazing Saddles. He did the theme, Sanford and Son, played the harmonica for the theme there.
Yeah.
Uncredited musician on the Muppet Movie from 1979. Just a ton of stuff. Just
do you know?
Obviously
do you know if he did harmonica in Once Upon a Time in the West? Because that famously has this eerie. The main theme is this very eerie harmonica, and the character's name in it is, they just call him Harmonica. Yeah. The Charles Bronson character, if I'm remembering all this correctly. I don't know if you have that in front of you.
Yeah, no, that's not coming up in IMDb.
Okay.
Yeah, he did play in something in Mickey's Once Upon a Christmas from 1999. Was the harmonica soloist in that.
There you go. Man, the path not taken. I should have like started playing harmonica when I was like 5 years old.
Could have played harmonica. It's probably one of those things that's like bassoon or something, just in terms of like, if you can kind of corner that market. There's not a lot of people that do that really well.
Or being like a punter, you just you're just
the specialist.
Do one thing really well and then just make a living off it, and you barely, I mean, for real, you don't have to work that many days of the year,
Yeah. So IMDb has kind of his movie and television appearances, and or kind of the things that he played for. And then his Wikipedia article have his his albums. So he played with he's on a lot of albums with a lot of musicians. He played with going back to the Carpenters and Olivia Newton-John and Melissa Manchester and Dolly Parton. He's on there's a Linda Ronstadt album there. There's Brian Wilson. I guess apparently he was in like the Smile Sessions.
Oh, okay.
He played some of that with Brian Wilson. He's played with James Taylor and Barbara Streisand, and just a bunch of other people. This is I guess someone at the studio probably called that in, where Danny Elfman just said, hey, I need a harmonica for this part, and someone at the studio says, wait, we got a guy, one of those kind of things. And
it turns out to be the guy. Yeah.
And it turned out to be the guy. So Danny, that was like the one kind of the only comment from this section of the film from Danny was like, he was really impressed. Like, they brought this guy in, and boom, one take, and he hit it. And this is really, it's a really fun, jaunty little, on the road, let's go. We're moving down the road kind of theme with the great harmonica work. So we mentioned the Etzel that stops and picks up Pee-wee. And the Etzel is driven by Mickey, played by Judd Omen, who has got a few credits, not a huge things, not a lot of other things that I'd recognized him in.
Well, first of all, for about 25 years, I just didn't think about who this was at all and assumed it was, do you know? Who do you think I assumed this person was, this actor?
He does look, I can't think of the name. He does look like someone.
Jimmy Smits.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. He's got.
I always assumed this was Jimmy Smits, and but
maybe
it's
an
not.
Older brother.
Yeah. It's not Jimmy Smits or Space Jimmy Smits for that matter. Judd Omen. But no, he is familiar looking if you're my age or older. He was a character. Like for an episode actor, what would you call that? guest star or whatever.
Yeah.
In every 80s police procedural or I mean, he basically did the circuit of the
Yeah,
all the
like
different
he was in like three different episodes of the A Team, playing a different character
right,
each time. But like
right,
he's in the Fall Guy and
right.
Hardcastle and McCormick
That's
and
it. Yeah,
Scarecrow and Mrs. King, and
there you go.
just and one
Hunter,
episode of Matlock, and
yeah, Matlock. Yeah, the only one he didn't do, I really, it got to the point where I'm like, what didn't he do? He wasn't on an episode of Riptide, and I'm like, if he was on Riptide, that would be
yeah,
he would have hit all of them. He would have hit for
right,
the cycle, as they would say.
yeah, yeah,
But
um,
no, he definitely looked familiar to me at the time. I assumed he was Jimmy Smith's. But yeah, did a lot of work. I mean, a lot of people in this movie are they're TV actors. You
oh
know,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, we get a lot of those. We get a lot of a lot of the actors that have come up are like, okay, yeah, this is someone who did it was like in, every a lot of the cowboys that we saw during the rodeo scene. It was like, okay, this guy was in every Western in the
right?
50s and 60s kind of thing. And
He was in
yeah,
60 episodes of Gunsmoke, and each episode he played a different guy. Yeah,
yep,
different
yep,
character.
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a couple of things that I pulled out, and I kind of go back and rewatch. I didn't recognize, I don't remember Judd from this, but he was in Red Dawn and then David Lynch's Dune, both from 1984. And those are two films that I've not seen in a while, so I'll have to go back and rewatch those to
I've
see if I can pick them
rewatched
out.
the Lynch version of Dune, and I can't place him. And my only guess is he might be one of the House Atreides like soldiers.
That's my guess. Now he actually has
Yeah,
a name, Jameis. So he's not,
Jameis. Oh,
he's not like, Palace Guard number 3 or
right,
Soldier. He has an
right.
actual name, but I'm guessing he was just sort of in the background. I'm my
Yeah,
guess is it's not a huge part, but
yeah.
yeah, I'll have to go back and rewatch and see if I can pick him out.
And then I feel like I do remember him from Red Dawn, but I haven't seen that in, gosh, 35 years or something.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, I remember the premise of Red Dawn being that there's a Russian, Soviet invasion, and they're being helped by, it's a fever dream. They're being helped by, Cubans and Nicaraguans and whatever other, boogeymen we had at the time. And
yeah, yeah,
his face, I can picture him in that movie. So yeah.
yeah. So Pee Wee gets picked up by Mickey here, and they get, says, oh, let's listen to some music, turn on the radio. And of course, like the trope is, as soon as you turn on the radio, like it's the right time and the right channel to instantly get, the one important thing.
Right.
The one bit
Exposition
of
radio.
expedition we need. Yeah.
Yeah.
Expedition radio.
Well,
Talk
what's
about,
even funnier is it's usually when they do this trope in a movie, it'll be like the end of a song,
mhm.
and then you'll hear a voice be like, "We come to you with this breaking news bulletin. So the First National Bank has been robbed. Keep an eye out for the suspect." It's not even that. It's just he turns it on and it's already in mid sentence,
Yeah.
and he could leave it on. How would Pee Wee know? Like, I mean, he saw the handcuffs, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think it's funny that he's like, no, I got to turn it. Like, turning it off is actually more suspicious than
Yeah.
letting him hear it. Yeah,
Yeah, and unless he's worried about like they're gonna like describe his appearance and what he's wearing and everything. But yeah,
exactly.
there's nothing suspicious about it until he
Right.
hurriedly turns it off, and that's suspicious. And then so kind of Pee Wee picks up on that and says, "What do you do? What did you do?"
Yeah.
Um, and I have a
This.
question. So, well,
Yeah.
he says he lost his temper. He took a knife, and those little "do not remove under penalty of law" labels they put on mattresses. Well, I cut them off. I cut one of them off. What do you think? Well, so at any point, thinking back to when you were a young man seeing this for the first time, did you think that's what he did? And if not, like, then or now, like, what do you think he actually did?
I
What was he in for?
I think he really did do that, and that's the joke.
Mm-hmm.
The joke in this universe is that somebody caught someone cutting the tags off of mattresses,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore that's why he's in jail. Personally,
That's
this is the one joke in the movie
yeah.
that doesn't land, because this was already a hacky bit back
Mm-hmm.
in 1985.
Yeah.
because I remember comedians talking, doing a hacky bit about those, I'm going to do a Seinfeld voice, what is the deal with the, but I remember in the early 80s, people talking about, ooh, I'm so scared. I'm not supposed to remove the tags from the mattresses. Imagine being, hanged for that or whatever. And yeah, it's the one joke I wish I could go into the screenplay and kind of make notes. Let's put something else here. But and it tries to set it up as a misdirection. That he
Right.
lost his temper and took a knife and killed his girlfriend or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he like I now I think he cut somebody, whether he killed him or not, and then you're thinking it's got to be like the sentence was serious enough that he's risking escape. So he may have done some bit of harm, which is, and I think he eyes up Pee Wee and kind of surmises like, okay, this person is innocent. This isn't innocent.
Fair
This
enough.
is a
Yeah.
naive person. If I tell them what I did, he seems like he feels the need to unburden himself. He wants to confess, but if he says it, like, this person's going to jump out of the car without even waiting for me to stop. So he kind of quickly makes up a story. That's what I think now. When I
Okay.
first saw it, and for probably 20 years after the first time I saw it, like, I thought that's what he did, because of we're in this crazy world of Pee Wee,
Right.
where who knows, we were talking about, like, who knows where we are, who knows what year it is, who knows what's grown up and what's childish, what's the truth. So yeah, for a long time I believe, like, that's what he was in for. Like, he actually cut off one of those do not remove under penalty of law tags that they have on mattresses and pillows and stuff, like. But now I think that's just a story he made up for Pee Wee.
Okay. He was like sort of sparing the Pee Wee from trauma by
Yeah,
describing an actual, homicide
yeah,
or something.
you know,
So,
yeah. He's probably thinking, for whatever reason, they're looking for a man alone. So if I have someone with me, it'll be part of my cover. Or, he's thinking like he'll be able to use him as a hostage later. For whatever reason, he wants Pee
yeah,
Wee to
that is,
stay.
I've always wondered about his motivation for picking him
Yeah,
up, but
that is weird. Like, you're on the run, you think speed is most important. Like, take time to stop,
right.
and pick someone up. Like, why does he do it? But yeah, so for the longest time, I believe that's what that's what he did. He
I
removed
still
one of
do.
those
But
tables. I bought it. It was convincing. Yeah, so they're rolling down the road. Now, at one point we get kind of in the background. So they pass, they kind of, or they get passed by another truck that's got the X1, got Pee Wee's bike
yeah,
in the back, and of course they're Pee Wee's looking the wrong way,
right.
and he doesn't see it. I think that's funny. And so that there's a note Tim Burton mentions in his commentary that that's the only studio note that they got. I'm sorry, not Tim. It was actually Paul that mentions, like, so the only note from the studio, any changes they recommended that made it into the film was that one thing that originally we weren't going to see the bike until the very end, or until it shows up on TV when PW's in the hospital. And then it was kind of a studio note saying, "Hey, why don't you give us a little tease?"
That's a good
Like,
note.
yeah, and then it was
And it's sort of a life lesson, be
yeah,
even uh if you're going to get obsessed about recovering something, don't blind yourself to it being right there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I think it also gives us a little bit of a tease in that. So there, he's heading in the right direction. No, so now obviously it's
Right.
it's the wrong reason. We think Madame Ruby is a scam artist and not a real psychic. But whatever direction he's heading, the bike is heading in the same direction. Now then they turn off. There's a fork in the road, and the bike goes one way, or the truck with the bike goes one way, and then the Etzel that PW is in goes another way. But, like, so there's like, oh, the bike's right there. Like, I can imagine um, in some communities, you may have people, yelling at the screen when they saw this to tell, turn around, look
It's right
around, turn your
there.
head. He's right there. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting thing. And then Tim Burton makes a note that, like, that got a response in the the test screenings they did.
Oh, cool.
That
Yeah.
little bit. So they were happy for that change. And I thought that was a good thing.
And
Good lord.
now you could make a meme where it goes by and then you just sort of like, pick the right image and basically make it look like Pee-wee sees it and goes, "Hey, that's my bike." And then the next thing is the written and directed by George Lucas, the ending. Like the movie ends. He found his bike.
Yeah, there you go. It's yeah. We'll make it a short then. Yeah, so they drive around and then they come up into they face a roadblock. They're
Yeah.
talking about the law, and suddenly there it
The
is, the
law.
law, the law. Mickey pulls out a gun. He's just going to shoot it out, but
I
no,
know
wait.
that's really bleak. That he's like, "Well, this is it," and
This is it.
I was actually shocked just because you when you rewatch a segment for a podcast, you're really like dialed in, and I was like, "Wow, that's tonally pretty bleak for this movie." Yeah.
Yeah, it gets dark. Yeah, yeah. And just really quick, the police cars here, like again, looking old. This is
So old. The uniforms. Yeah.
yeah, it's a 75 Dodge Coronet, which I'm surprised. Like I would not have placed that in the I guess 70s. I mean, my thought would have been 60s, even older. But yeah, these the police cars here are yeah, are mid 70s. So again, just kind of making everything feel a little bit older than or some of the things, to feel older than than the mid 80s when this was done. But and I like that this is really quick in terms of like in terms of the film. There's no time, so they're pulling up. Mickey pulls out a gun. Pee-wee says, "Wait, I have an idea." And then we get, we kind of get the dashboard view, looking out. We see the not the dashboard, like the windshield view. We see the front of the car. We see the police, as if no time has passed. They're driving up, and then suddenly we see they're in disguise, which I guess I guess Pee-wee had these in his bindle.
Of course, he probably picked this up the week before at Mario's.
Yeah, he picked this up at Mario's. He's got.
Although it doesn't explain where he got the cute green dress from, but
yeah,
we don't know where it's magical realism. We don't have to think too much about where these things came from, but
yeah.
And
we might think that they're about to be busted when the officer asks PW to step out of the car, but it turns out he just wants to admire the outfit.
Right. I love it. It's so funny.
That was funny.
It's so funny. Yeah. And of course, Pee-wee like models it. It actually says that in the screenplay that he models the outfit for the
he gets out and he kind of then we get the line, why don't you take a picture, it'll last longer,
right?
And so in the commentary, this is like one of those things, like how rumors get started, or maybe I'm misinterpreting things. So in the commentary, Paul says this is his sister, kind of with a laugh.
No.
And I think he's joking. Obviously this is Paul Rubin, in a dress, kind of thing. But then in the IMDb trivia, it says this character is based on his sister.
Sure.
And I don't know if maybe he talked about it in another place. There's another interview where he says that, but like what he, when he mentions his sister in the commentary, I think it's obvious, like he's just joking. He's, this is, Paul in a dress. This is not, Paula or Paulina.
But maybe this is how his sister dressed in 1965, like he remembers this outfit. It may actually be the outfit that she wore. Like he's like, do you still have that, that green thing that you wore? Send it to me. We're going to put it in the movie, I didn't know that, but I'm picturing it being like that, happening like that.
But I thought that was, kind of funny the way that got, if that is indeed the source for that bit of IMDb trivia, kind of how it gets twisted. He makes a joke, about this being his sister, and then someone goes into IMDb and enters it saying, oh, this character, or when PW dresses up, that's based on his sister. So that may or may not be true. Who knows? But in any case, it works, and they get past the blockade. And then we cut to it's nighttime. and Mickey is sleeping in the passenger seat, and
Well,
PW is driving, which
can I back up
yeah.
real
Oh yeah,
quick?
please do. Sorry, I don't want to.
One of my favorite moments. I'm so glad I got this segment because one of my favorite moments in the whole movie is right before that. And
Mhm.
it's where they're driving away. Mickey is ripping off his like fake goatee and mustache. He's like, "Oh, that was close."
Mhm.
And then he looks over at Pee Wee. Pee Wee's just like completely settled into this new character of, I guess, based on his sister or whatever. And just like, getting cozy basically in that and just sort of bopping along. And Mickey like looks at him like, what is the first reaction he does is a kind of like, what is your deal? Why are you still wearing that outfit? And then he does
And he
a
kind of smiles. Yeah.
classic double take. And the double take lands and he does this look like, hey, he's kind of cute. And
Yeah.
every time it gets me because it's completely nonverbal. It has perfect timing.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that is a perfect comedic double take, and then the linger
The
on it.
linger. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a good word.
and it's not like lascivious or something. It's not too vulgar or anything. It's just more of a, hey, you're kind of cute.
Yeah. So,
That's it.
another place and time, maybe. Hey, we don't know how long Mickey's been locked up. So
Right.
yeah, that's funny. Yeah, it kind of gives you it kind of, or it gives me an idea of how important what happens on set, whether it's the director and the actor, or the probably collaboration between the two. So what they have in the script for that is the drive off the Etzel winds up the mountain road. Mickey has taken off his disguise. As they drive along, Mickey contemplates Pee Wee, who is still in disguise.
Contemplates.
Yeah, and and then
Yeah.
then the next thing is like cut to you know cut
Then
to
it's nighttime. Yeah.
cut to it's nighttime, and PW's driving, and everything else. Like, so all it says is Mickey contemplates Pee Wee, who is still in disguise. But yeah,
There's
that
your
look where
episode title right there.
yeah, but yeah, the way he kind of looks up and down and smiles, like
Yeah.
because yeah, I think it's the first look. The way I read it is, so the first look is one of appreciation. Like, I took this person to be a bit of a simpleton.
Right.
When I first picked him up, I thought it was kind of a bit of a patsy, but hey, it turned out he had a really good idea, and he got us past the police, and got us past the checkpoint. So like the
Right.
first look is one of sort of like a newfound
It's a relief.
kind of so there's relief, and then like I guess like intellectual appreciation, like okay,
Right.
there's more to this more to this person than I originally gave him credit for. And then yeah, and then that look like there's a different kind of appreciation.
Yeah.
Maybe a more more superficial of Pee-wee's appearance at that point. But yeah, great performance there.
Yeah.
Yeah, give him the looks. But yeah, so good point, good pickup. But yeah, so then we cut to nighttime, and Mickey's dozing off, and PW's driving, and we get the sequence of roadsides. We get the first sign is curvy road. I think this is like curvy road ahead, and it just shows a bend, and then it's like a squiggly line, and then it's like completely like looped and twisted.
Right.
And then finally falling rocks, and then
which of course
as the road gets as
they fall,
as the road gets rougher and rougher, eventually PDB just takes the car off the road and off the edge of a cliff, and they're just flying through the air to certain doom. And then he wakes Mickey up, which is like, what, just let him sleep.
Yeah.
He really he's just let him, if they're doomed, let him let him sleep through it. Does he really need to be up for this? But they wake up, they scream, but thinking at the last moment, it occurs to Pee-wee to open up the top of the convertible, and it acts like a parachute, and they drift gently down to the ground.
It's yet another instance of just borrowing a trope from a 1950s cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this will work. The convertible top will act as a parachute and just gently set them down.
Yeah, this is
That
something
is
out
the
of
essence
yeah, a
of,
cartoon.
yeah, that is definitely one of the essential elements of this movie is cartoon physics. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And we're getting at more of that later on. But yeah, that's cartoon physics, I think, is the word for it.
Or it's like
Um,
Pee Wee thought
yeah.
in that moment, oh, I saw this in a cartoon. I'll try it. Oh, sure enough, it's working. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then we get a little callback here. So Mickey has had enough of Pee Wee. It's all about, what have you done for me lately? Sure, sure, you got us past the cops, but then you just almost killed us driving us off the road. Um, and we get a I know this speech sounds awfully familiar. I like you, like you. That's why I can't drag you into this. I'm bad, Pee Wee. You don't want to get mixed up with a guy like me. I'm a loner. I'm a rebel.
Yeah. Oh, go
Deja
ahead.
vu. Yeah.
Deja vu. I like the subversion of the idea in a conventional movie, which this is a very conventional movie. In the previous episode, you talk about how they borrowed the Sid Field How to Write a
Oh yeah.
Screenplay book,
Yes.
and
Yes.
followed it to a T. But in a normal movie, Pee Wee would have heard Mickey say that, and then said that to Dottie in a later scene. Like, oh,
Right.
I heard this cool guy and I want to be like the cool guy. And
Yeah.
so I'm
Yeah.
going to, when I need to like kind of brush her off, I'm going to say this thing and it's going to be so cool. And instead, the subversion
They
of it is
flip it,
he
right?
said it originally. And now he's hearing the cool guy say it to him. And he's like, oh, that's weird. I like that. That's inventive plot structuring or whatever.
Yeah.
Writing. Yeah.
Yeah. Good writing. Yeah, it turns out. But this is we kind of believe it. So going back to, when Pee Wee gives the speech to Dottie, and he's very serious, he's very straight delivering it. But then as he's walking out of the bike shop, we see him smiling, we hear the laugh, we
A
know
little
that,
skip in the step. Yeah.
yeah, he's skipping out, he's laughing at himself like, oh my God, I was so serious there for a moment. Whereas here, like, yeah, we get the feel like this is a real bad guy. This is,
Yeah.
he's not going to be laughing as he drives away, or maybe he is. I don't know. We don't know. Because the car peels off and he just leaves Pee Wee there in the middle of nowhere. We just see the two red taillights disappearing off into the distance.
When you have a limited budget, shoot in the dark,
Yeah.
in complete darkness.
Yeah.
And then the viewer
Yeah.
will fill in any scenery that's necessary.
Right.
I mean, they could be in a parking lot for all we know. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, they might have been, and I don't know if you can pick this up, and when I mention it, go back and watch it again. If you didn't notice it before, you're going to notice it next time. So the signs I mentioned, the curve ahead and falling rocks and everything. If you look real close, you can see the string that the
Yep.
signs are being pulled on. So
Yep.
the car, so as they're shooting this, the car / camera is stationary instead of instead of the signs being stationary along the road and the car moving.
You're
The
just
car
moving
is
the
sitting
signs.
still,
Yeah.
and they're pulling the signs past on rope. And if you look, as when the signs get close, it kind of gets into the headlights of the car. You can kind of see the ropes down near the base that's pulling the sign past the camera.
I think whether it was intentional or not, I'm sure Tim Burton saw that in
Yeah.
the dailies or whatever, and said, well, he probably said, I meant to do that.
I meant to do that. Yeah.
But it also it invokes that B movie Ed Wood imagery, and it's like, yeah, leave it in. This is
Yeah.
all part of this
Yeah.
subconscious world of universe of Pee Wee Herman that
Yeah.
and we there's so many moments in Pee Wee's Playhouse where they're not attempting to hide the fishing line or anything.
Yeah.
And that's the charm.
And yeah, it's the charm. It kind of plays into it. Yeah, and so that brings us to the end of this section of film. I do have one more question that I've been asking all my guests that I would like to ask at this time. So this is not a holiday film, as we've covered for our past holiday specials. It doesn't involve Christmas or Hanukkah or any specific holiday, but I think it fits the mold of a holiday film in terms of great rewatchability, lots of fun, suitable for the whole family. So I'm kind of calling this like sort of a non-traditional holiday tradition kind of thing. So I was wondering, Chris, as my guest, do you have any non-traditional traditions, things that they're a tradition for you or your family that you do every year, around the holidays, but it's not like a Christmas tree that the holidays in the name, that
Right.
makes it a
It's
tradition.
that
And I'll
Currier and Ives imagery
Yeah.
or Norman
um
Rockwell style.
do you have do you have any kind of sort of non-traditional traditions?
We do a similar thing, my wife and I, where we'll try to take advantage of the fact that no one is on the roads or out at all on Christmas Eve.
Hmm.
And we'll make a point of going to we've moved around a little bit in the last few years, but we'll go to wherever there's the town has set up or the city has set up a Christmas light public display in one of the parks,
Hmm.
and we'll just go and walk, and it's amazing. You do that on Christmas Eve at like 8 p.m. There's no one there,
Yeah.
and it's real quiet, and it's just a nice um gentle walk where it just gets you away from the or at least settles you from all the hectic stuff that came before.
Yeah.
I feel like the worst thing you can do is go to like if you go to like one of those like festival of Christmas lights at the zoo thing, the first week of December. Well,
Yeah, it's going to be
everyone's going to
just
be
packed
there.
and
Right. But
crazy.
on actual Christmas Eve, people got stuff to do. They got to
Yeah.
be with their families, and that's where my wife and I just sneak out and go for a nice walk.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
another thing that so movie wise, one of the things that we stumbled into, there's absolutely no rhyme or reason to this, but it's become a de facto tradition. We will watch on New Year's Eve. We're boring. We do not go out. We stay in and we watch Raising Arizona. I don't know
Nice.
why. It's other than we like that movie
Yeah.
a lot. And we've even talked about doing a movies by minute podcast about Raising Arizona.
Sure. Well,
Um,
there's a lot of stuff, there's a lot of detail, a lot of stuff you
yeah,
could talk about. Yeah.
yeah. But that is something we end up watching almost every New Year's Eve.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's similar to this in terms of um it's not it's not like a Christmas Carol or Die Hard. It's not centered
No.
around a holiday, but it's something it's I can there's a lot of detail, so it's got rewatchability. I don't think that's
Yeah.
something you're going to get, that's not a film you're going to get bored with anytime soon. But I could see having that kind of comfort to, you could just, this is what we're doing. Christmas Eve, we're watching Raising Arizona.
Right. And it's got a lot of lines of dialogue that we already say to each other, anyways, just to make each other
Yeah,
laugh. So,
yeah,
yeah.
that's good. Yeah, and when you're the other thing, the first thing you're talking about in terms of, if you go out Christmas Eve, and
Mhm.
if your town has a big display or there's a tree up, and you go and it's deserted, and you'll have kind of the scene to yourself. You going back to me talking about kind of, I try to get away from the family if I'm visiting and get some alone time. So oftentimes I'd kind of pair that with like reading a book. I'd grab a book, particularly if I got if I got a new book as a gift on Christmas. It's at some point that afternoon, or maybe the next day, I'd sneak off and just spend a couple hours reading on my own. But we got a puppy a few years ago,
Oh, great.
and
Yeah.
that's always nice, because if you ever want to get away, I got to walk the dog. The
Got
dog
it.
needs to go
He's got
out.
to go out. It's not
Yeah,
me saying this. He's got to go
yeah,
out. Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
me. I'd love to spend love nothing more than just to spend all my time with with my family and my in-laws. But the dog's got to go, nature calls. But if you go out like at kind of anytime, like between like 10 a.m. or kind of anytime Christmas Day, 10 a.m., noon, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, just go out, walking around the neighborhood, and not only no one else walking around, maybe maybe I'll run into one other person who's doing the same thing, walking their dog, but like no cars on the street.
Oh, I
No
love it.
no one walking around. The parks are empty.
So
There's no
quiet.
cars. It's
Yeah.
just it's almost something like out of a zombie movie when they show,
Exactly.
someone's walking around. There's just, it's, a strangely populated area, but there's no people around.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, if you go out and you walk your dog at like noon on Christmas Day, yeah, it's going to be very, very quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so if you just want the quiet, you want to get away from, yeah, there's, family with kids and lights and noise, and then someone, little Timmy got a drum set for Christmas that he's banging away on. You're like, you know what? I
I
gotta
am
walk
out
the
of here.
dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Hey, so I promised a fun
yeah,
fact about my appearance on this show.
yeah, yeah.
And that I think that was in the green room. So this is the first time you're hearing about it, listener. Um, I am the second consecutive guest that you've had on who has ridden a bike on Mackinaw Island in Lake Superior, Huron. I forget which one,
Yeah.
but I have also done that. You were talking to
Talking to the
Tabitha,
Carlisles,
the
Tabitha and
Carlisles,
Jonathan.
and she talked about riding a bike on Mackinac Island, which is this
Yeah.
carless. We were talking about the fact that there are no cars driving around. It's a carless environment, and we went there on vacation last year, and there. The joy that Pee Wee has when he's riding his bike around in the
Mhm.
first few minutes of the movie, my wife said I had that look on my face to because we just got these rental bikes and they're very like beach cruiser kind of bikes. They're not athletic or serious bikes. But knowing that you're in no danger at all from being hit by another car, it is so fun. And yeah, so what are the odds, right?
What what are the odds? Indeed. So that's, yeah. So maybe that's something I'll put on my list of places to visit and ride a tandem bike on.
Yeah. Yeah, we weren't on a tandem bike because we don't get along enough to do that. But yeah.
Yeah. Oh, but that's, yeah, that's nice. That's funny. That's a nice little coincidence, nice little tie into yeah, our previous episode there. Awesome, awesome. Well, so that kind of, I mean, I that kind of brings out what I've got to say about this portion. Anything else you wanted to say about, about the big adventure, about Pee Wee or Paul Rubens, or about bike riding? Anything else? Anything else you
I
want
am
to
an avid bike
say?
rider. Please, support bike infrastructure development. That's not a joke. That's for real.
Yeah, no, no, yeah.
In your town, you will love it. But no, I just when I was watching this last night again for I don't know the 105th time, I realized, and it's captured in the first few minutes of this movie. Ultimately, this movie is about joy and wonder
Mhm.
in a world that actually in the world that he travels in this is pretty forgiving about the joy and wonder, but the real world that we know is not. And I think that also is a big reason why I was kind of upset when Paul Rubens died. But that's such a neat feeling, and maybe that's why it makes it such a great holiday movie. Is that that this is the season we're supposed to experience that, right? That
Right.
joy
Yeah.
and
This is
wonder.
just is supposed to be, yeah, the season of wonder,
Yeah.
and
And how often do we
yeah.
really feel that? And I feel it vicariously through him. The only other movie I can think of that is similar, and it's really just a portion of the movie, the opening credits to the first Austin Powers movie, when
Mm,
he is walking around this, and it's of course a backlot,
yeah.
it's a curated reality, as I was talking about before, of swinging 60s London, and he's
Yeah.
just walking around and going, yeah, yeah, and just sort of pointing at people, having fun and just going,
Yeah.
yeah. And I thought, oh, that's Pee-wee. That's the same basic emotion that Pee-wee has in the first 20 minutes of, until he loses his bike. It's just seeing other people and going, yeah, I'm good with what you're enjoying. And these other, and everyone's on the same wavelength. Everyone's happy, everyone's doing what makes them happy. It's just neat. We don't get to experience, I don't get to experience that very often. So
Yeah, I can kind of see the parallels of like, that beginning of that world of Austin Powers is kind of
Yeah.
like when Pee-wee's in his house, in his bedroom, and um when he's in his world. All right, nice. I like it. All right, so I think that kind of brings us in. We'll wrap it up
Yep.
for this episode of Next Scene's Big Adventure. But Chris, this has been an absolute joy. It's been wonderful. I've enjoyed it. I know my listeners have. I think I don't think I'll get too many challenges on that. But so if folks want to hear more from you, if they haven't,
Oh,
if they're not
geez.
familiar with your vast over of podcasting, where can where can our listeners hear more?
Well, you can settle in with the Apocalypse Now minutes for a movie that is tonally the exact opposite of
It's a
Pee-wee's Big
little bit
Adventure.
different, yeah.
Although there is a connection. I guess Lawrence Fishburne was,
Yeah.
as Larry Fishburne, was in Apocalypse Now, and he was Cowboy Curtis on Pee-wee's Playhouse. So we did a Movies by Minute about that, and it's called the Apocalypse Now Minutes. We also, and I say we, that's me and Tierney Steele Callahan, who you might recognize from some other Movies by Minute podcasts. And Tierney and I also did a Movies by Minute podcast about Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Mhm.
And that podcast is called This Means Something, ... And the first Movies by Minute podcast I did with my friend Rudy, it was about 2001: A Space Odyssey, and that one, I'm sure we mentioned Pee-wee during that though. And that
Yeah,
one's,
I don't know how you would cover that and not mention
I'm
Pee-wee. How
sure it came up. And I think at one point Rudy must have said, "I say we let him go." But that one's called Open the Podcast Doors, Hal. All of these exist on Spotify. I think the Close Encounters one and the 2001 only exist on Spotify. And the Apocalypse Now minutes exists on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all Google Play, all that. If that even exists, I haven't been keeping up. I know there's been some shakeups in the podcasting world. So
Google
I don't think Google
is changed. If you put your
Yeah.
podcast up on like Google Play or Google Music or whatever it was years ago, it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
But
Spotify, and I'm not trying to plug Spotify, but I know all three of those still exist there.
Yeah. And I listened to all three of those, and all three of those are great podcasts. So I absolutely encourage people to go back and check that out. And that's where you can go if you want to hear more of Chris's insightful commentary on films. I don't know why you're laughing. That's not a joke.
Some people call it rambling.
Rambling, commentary, whatever. But so go back. I would encourage people to check that out. And kind of check us out. So we're coming up. We're barely halfway through. This is part 4 of our 9-part coverage. So please, we're let us know your memories of bike riding, on Mackinaw Island, tandem or otherwise. You can reach us. We're at Next Scene Pod on Instagram and Threads and Mastodon and Blue Sky. nextscenepod.com is the website, and of course you can always reach us at the Facebook group, our Jelly of the Month Club. And then when you're done posting and reading all the good stuff at those places, come on right back and meet us next time for The Next Scene.